Estranged from my abusive mother, I realized she wielded her trauma as a weapon against me. I can only slow it down, she said of her incurable lupus. Decades of misogyny and familial chaos, now I see it as her karmic consequence. Was it all a self-inflicted curse? I no longer communicate with my mother, who is now in her late 50s, due to my extremely traumatic childhood and personal experiences with her abusive and cruel behavior. It has required extensive therapy and self-reflection for me to realize that it was not my fault and that there was nothing I could have done to deserve the treatment I received. The insights have come in waves over the years. Initially, I sensed deep down that her harsh punishments toward me were abnormal, that I was despised in a manner far beyond how most parents are meant to feel about their children. I experienced such profound rage and sadness for years after I moved out that I was unable to process it all. Eventually, it became clear to me that my mother used me as a scapegoat for all her stressors and frustrations, that I was the family's punching bag as a vulnerable young woman with neurodiversity and artistic interests. Later, I realized that my mother harbored significant internalized sexism stemming from her many years devoted to the conservative Catholic Church and her far-right upbringing. A considerable portion of her anger and aggression was misdirected toward her nonconforming daughter for defying traditions, often when I was too young to fully comprehend them. Moreover, the revelations continued to unfold how she resented my outspoken personality, because I was entirely unafraid to challenge her authority and reference even her own teachings as evidence of her complete lack of morals and fairness in how she managed the household. She pitted me against my 5 siblings with chronic favoritism and comparison, favoring boys over girls and being excessively frugal with my sisters and my needs while indulging my brothers with luxuries. She compelled us to compete for her approval through our academic performance, hobbies, social lives, and devotion to the Catholic faith. She ruthlessly slut-shamed the already highly chaste women in our family, deeply instilled disordered eating and a sense of perpetual body dysmorphia, and intentionally undermined the self-esteem and self-efficacy of her assigned female at birth children to ensure they were psychologically wounded for the benefit of future husbands who would dominate and control. She grew up in her own form of misogynistic degrading inferno, and instead of confronting her own cognitive dissonance, she longed for her chance to seize control as the tyrant of her own family and perpetuate the cycle of oppression and abuse, just as her mother did and as her mother before her. The narcissistic antagonist of the first 20 years of my life turned out to be nothing more than another power-drunk middle manager, delivering criticism inherited from her own oppressor. Simultaneously, I recognized how my aunts, her sisters, exhibited the same cynical constructs of womanhood and expressed equal disdain toward their own gender. Gradually, the image of generational trauma emerged, a lineage of women who endured abuse and accepted their roles, merely waiting for their chance to become wives and mothers so they could inflict the same harsh control within their own households. This mother wound has festered for centuries, with any individual who broke free from its restrictive confines being swiftly silenced or ostracized. The disgust and despair I have experienced with each new memory unearthed, now reframed by my adult worldview, has only intensified. For as long as I have had the capacity to feel this pain, I have longed for some form of karmic justice for it all. Just the other day, I stumbled upon something that aligned the final piece of the puzzle. It was a brief TikTok video of a woman discussing the intriguing genetic and non-genetic connections discovered linking womanhood to autoimmune disease. Some studies indicate that as many as 80% of people with autoimmune conditions are assigned female at birth. Data suggests a link with X chromosome mutations, and further research reveals a strong correlation between severe autoimmune disorders and mental health issues or stress. My mother developed an autoimmune disease when I was in my early teens, which caused her to suffer a decline in vision and intense pain in her eyes if she failed to take her medication consistently. I can still recall specific days when she forgot to take her prednisone. I have never taken this medication and only remember its name because she mentioned it, and its effects were so memorable, because she would experience unbearable migraine-like symptoms, display irrational anger at the slightest sounds around her, and find direct sunlight intolerable. She expressed to me once, in a bleak manner, that she was certain she would be completely blind by the end of her life. Then, in my early 20s, she developed a second autoimmune condition, this one much worse than the first lupus. Her skin now reacted violently to direct sunlight, breaking out in large red rashes that she scratched incessantly while complaining about the relentless irritation. After the lengthy and difficult diagnosis process, several years of her life were filled with excruciating discomfort, as she continually searched for effective methods to protect her inflamed skin from sun exposure and treat the breakouts until the treatments finally began to work, making the symptoms more manageable. One Sunday morning at breakfast, following yet another unbearably dull church service, she flatly stated, "I'm going to die from this." I inquired about the severity of her symptoms and probed further regarding her earlier assertion that they had become manageable. She elaborated on her grim thoughts. It's not so bad now, I'm still young enough to fight it. However, eventually it will get worse as I age and it will likely be what ultimately kills me. It's a degenerative disease. I can only slow it down. I remember feeling horrified by her blunt acknowledgement and acceptance of the situation. Despite her frequent inaccuracies about many matters, I do not believe she was lying about this. My mother is a manipulative, violent bigot, but she is also a licensed medical doctor. Even if it is an exaggeration, the thought still haunts me. While lupus can be treated and managed, it remains a lifelong condition with no cure. When I saw that TikTok explaining the connection between autoimmune disorders and prolonged psychological distress, along with the statistic indicating that married women are more likely to suffer from severe mental health issues like depression, I recognized that long before my mother received her autoimmune diagnosis, her marriage to my biological father was a defining factor in transforming our home environment into my personal hell. He was a pathological cheater, a sex addict with no inhibitions, who sought self-destruction through workplace affairs so pervasive that they forced my entire family to relocate across the United States multiple times, as he was repeatedly fired due to the numerous inappropriate relationships he forged with colleagues. I know this because, even as a child under 10 years old, this troubling and upsetting information was revealed to me during her many drunken rants. She held him in utter contempt and never hesitated to communicate those feelings to her frightened and impressionable children. The divorce that followed was extremely bitter and resulted in years of contentious arbitration and a seemingly endless custody struggle over the children that ultimately neither of them appeared to genuinely want. Despite her vitriolic defamation of our father, one old life philosophy and belief was steadfast. She made it clear that she was never the one to initiate the grave sin of divorce, as it was termed within her church. She took pride in being the more virtuous party, despite her marriage being an absolute war zone, as she did not seek its end first. During the divorce proceedings, she even refrained from meeting or dating other men, as she still believed in remaining faithful to her soon-to-be ex-husband. The custody battles were not legitimately resolved, as my father died in a freak plane accident several years into the proceedings and custody defaulted to her. And then came the autoimmune conditions. When I saw that TikTok, I felt as though I could physically sense a massive network of neurons finally making one last connection to form the realization that this was my mother's karmic justice. The depressing consequence of a lifetime of internalized misogyny and bleeding profusely from the same festering generational mother wound. It was her insistence on maintaining her family's and church's oppressive beliefs, her idolization of submission and compliance with innately sexist teachings that prevented her from changing, healing, or breaking the cycle of pain. Time and again, she chose to inflict harm on others, upholding everything that tore her family apart. This notion seems absurd, yet I feel it, I know it deep within me. A legacy of women harming women has finally metastasized into something deserving of the potential end of a lineage. I believe she may have caused her illness. Our family does not have a history of autoimmune diseases, but it does have a history of mental illness, violence, and misogyny. I cannot prove it, but I know it. Story 2. At 20, I felt invisible at my own birthday as my mom sobbed about our abusive stepdad. "I'll call the police," she promised. Soon after, I had to give up my puppy Nix with no support. "I just want to be treated like a human," I cried. "Will anyone finally see me?" Hi, I will begin by stating that I dislike life. I hear people all around me discussing how wonderful their lives are or how well they are doing, and they attempt to offer me advice. It simply never helps. If you had asked me probably even a year ago, I would have said life was acceptable, not outstanding, but acceptable. It truly was not acceptable, though. I just did not want to acknowledge that it was not, or something along those lines. However, fast forward to my 20th birthday, or the day we celebrated it with my family. Tensions had already been extremely high at home. Some issues were being raised that should not have been, and I am glad they were, but it ultimately became the thing that broke the dam, or whatever it is called, because when my mother arrived at the party, she would not even come inside. She called me to her car, where she proceeded to break down in tears and explained that she was done and going to tell my sister to go to the police, which I was initially excited about, shocked but excited. I ended up getting my sister outside. We all talked, just the three of us, and we agreed to go to the police. When we went inside, everyone's attention and concern turned to my sister and mother, which I did not mind at the time since they needed help. I received practically no support or sympathy. I felt forgotten. After that, we could not even return home. We had to stay at my aunt's house where the party was taking place, while my mother went to stay with her mother. We remained there for a week before moving to my other aunt's house, which is closer to my grandmother. Now, probably about a month at the most prior to this, I did what I had wanted to do since putting my puppy down a year earlier, which also occurred a week after my 19th birthday. I got a new puppy, a husky and shepherd mix at 2 weeks old, and I named her Nix. She immediately became my everything, and I realized I would do anything for what is best for her, even giving her up if necessary. Returning to my 20th birthday, about 3 days after the incident at the party, I recognized that the best and really only option I had for Nix was to give her up. So I did, and once again I had no support. No one there to comfort me after having to give up my baby, which I know sounds strange to call her that after only having her for a month, but she was. Yet that is not all. There is more to add to this whirlwind of an experience. At the time, we believed my stepfather, referred to as SD, the one we called the police on, was some imposing Marine which he did not live up to for even a year. It is amusing. Nevertheless, we thought he was this intimidating figure who could easily harm us if he desired. Therefore, my uncle, who was in the military, although I cannot recall which branch, sorry, along with my other uncle, and I needed to go to our house, where SD was still residing since the police could not legally remove him at that time and could not do so for a few more months, to retrieve as many belongings of my mother's, sisters, and mine as we could safely gather. Before I continue, I need to clarify that I personally went into that house probably 6 times, 2 of those times alone, to collect items. And remember, we still believed he was this formidable individual whom we all feared, and we had valid reasons to be frightened. The man was abusive both mentally and physically. After 6 trips into that house to retrieve my sister's belongings, each time I returned, she would find something else to complain about regarding what I had forgotten or messed up. Never once did she express gratitude, it was just constant criticism. I could go on endlessly about my sister, but it is also important to note that I do not hate her, I love my sister. She is just a narcissist and cannot always help herself from wanting to be the center of attention. It always seems to come at my expense. There are things I could discuss as well outside of this event, but this is truly the turning point that led me to start realizing things about myself, which opened up thoughts and feelings I had always had but never recognized. I now understand that I have probably been depressed for years, possibly dating back to elementary school and middle school. It had simply become so normal that I never even contemplated it. I am starting to realize that my entire life has just been one big mess, and it makes me even more depressed. I have never had anyone truly care about me apart from my mother. Even then, somehow it always circles back to my sister. My childhood friend abandoned me at the onset of high school, claiming he felt I was only using him when I was not. I simply enjoyed spending time with him. Throughout high school, I began to realize I was bisexual and had some sort of feelings for my then best friend, so I told him thinking it was a sensible decision. It was not. He began to treat me differently afterward, growing distant, but I thought whatever. For my 17th birthday, I invited him to my birthday party in July, a pool party. We played some Call of Duty for a while before deciding to prepare to swim, so I offered to change in the bathroom to provide him more space. I know how it might have appeared, but I was also quite naive, so I did not consider that and simply thought I was being considerate. He ended up saying that was inappropriate and perverted, which led to the end of our friendship, ultimately resulting in me having absolutely no friends going into my senior year of high school. As for work, things have not improved either. My first job was sufficient, but the management was poor, and I had a supervisor who just seemed to dislike me for no reason. So I left that job after obtaining one in a full kitchen at a Japanese restaurant. That job was fine for a while as well, until my only other coworker in the kitchen suddenly stopped doing many of his responsibilities, leaving them for me to handle. For example, it would be a busy day with a steady flow of tickets, and suddenly I would look over to see him gone, probably at the bar with the owner, leaving me alone with tickets still coming in. He would micromanage my every move and critique everything I would do. It reached a point where I could barely tolerate being nearby him at times. After a year there, I quit and returned to my first job, where I remained for another year until it was shut down because the company could not afford its rent. That year was filled with its own drama, which would warrant another post in itself, so I will spare you the details. After that, I got my previous job, from which I was just fired for reasons I both comprehend and find extremely frustrating. At this point, I will not lie, I am incredibly insecure about myself and do not believe I can truly do anything, and I have also been ill for about a week now. Therefore, yesterday, while barely able to stay awake, I went to work because I need the money, only to discover someone else had already been sent home due to an injury or something. One of the first things I attempted to communicate to my manager and supervisor was that I was sick and felt terrible, but they did not even listen to me. Naturally, when my work began to slip because I am unwell, they started to get angry and repeatedly told me the same things until I became frustrated and snapped. I was holding a bucket with both hands. If I released even one, I would drop the bucket and the spices inside, so when I felt a sneeze coming, because once again I am unwell, I hastily moved the bucket out of my way and sneezed as far from me as I could. Instead of saying bless you or something similar, my supervisor looked at me and said, "Next time try to cover it with your elbow," and I lost it. Every single time I sneeze there, which happens frequently since they are one of those spicy chicken places using many spices, I would sneeze into my elbow, which she has witnessed countless times. So the one time I simply could not sneeze into my elbow because it would have caused me to drop a bucket of spices, she rebukes me. Consequently, I snapped and attempted to confront them about it, only to be told to go home before I could say anything and informed I was fired before my next shift today. At this juncture, I am simply exhausted by it all. I am tired of striving to be a good person and being kind, tired of trying to do things the correct way while merely wanting to be treated like a human being. I am weary of living a life that I cannot envision going anywhere. I am fatigued by convincing myself that if I keep persevering and trying, things will get better. Throughout my life, I have been told that God is present to assist us and guide us, but I have attempted praying, tried asking for help, and at this point, if God is real, I just think he despises me. I just want it to end. I want this feeling of meaninglessness and worthlessness to disappear, yet I do not know how to achieve that since all therapy has done for me so far is make me recognize even more flaws within myself and present me with additional insecurities to berate myself over. I contemplate ending my life almost daily. I think about it so frequently that it has turned into common thoughts, the everyday ideas I ponder such as, wouldn't everyone be better off if I were dead? Or if I killed myself right now, nobody would even notice. I do not even know what I am asking for if I am asking for anything at all. I just wanted to expel some of the thoughts I cannot stop thinking about from my mind, even though I am aware it will likely do very little to actually assist me. I would not even be surprised if nobody looks at this or if no one cares. I have come to expect that no one will care. Thank you for reading, though, if there is anyone who is actually reading this. Story 3. At 14, I plunged into the dark world of pickup artists, believing girls were targets. I finally felt human at 19, thinking, for once I feel human. But 2 years ago, I realized I never saw them as people. How did I screw up so badly? I only realized 2 years ago that I had never truly regarded women as human beings. Not intentionally and not out of hatred or malice. I simply had not. I hope this post assists some boys and men who are experiencing similar struggles to those I faced. When I was 14, I typed how to get a girlfriend into Google. I was extremely shy, isolated, lacked friends to spend time with, and had no dating experience whatsoever. I was fixated on the concept of being in a relationship. At that time, it was the peak of the pickup artist era. Terms like negging and kino escalation were everywhere. Although the term red pill was not as prevalent then, the content and ideas already existed. I vividly recall the sensation of having discovered a secret knowledge. It felt like, oh no, everyone has deceived me and now I finally know the truth. I was vulnerable and distressed, but also perfectly prepared to accept that narrative. Society had taught me that men and women were fundamentally different, and the PUA content simply reinforced that belief step by step. I delved deeper. I read article after article detailing how girls think, why I should not be friends with them, how to approach them, what kinds of guys they preferred, and how to behave. It felt scientific, tactical, as if following the correct steps would yield the desired outcomes. Before entering high school, I began to apply some of this knowledge. I started small, saying hello to people on the street, asking for the time and requesting directions. Then when high school commenced, I pushed myself to engage with anyone I encountered. It was terrifying, but after a few weeks it worked. I made friends. I became socially functional. Some of those I met during that time are still part of my life today. That is genuinely the only real benefit I have ever derived from that entire world. My initial goal was to secure a girlfriend. I did achieve that goal that same year. However, when I kissed her, I did not feel excited or happy. I felt relieved that I had accomplished it on time before turning 16, relieved that I was no longer falling behind. Yet when I entered college, I was still a virgin. This fact caused me far more suffering than it should have. Some nights I found it impossible to sleep, lying there contemplating, what if I die without having had sex? Or what if I am still a virgin at 20? That fear engulfed me. So when I turned 19, I began pursuing everything: street pickup, nightlife pickup, dating apps, anything I could. After a few months, I finally had sexual intercourse. Yet again, the primary emotion I experienced was not joy or connection. It was relief. I distinctly remember the pressure in my chest vanishing instantly. It felt as if a curse had been lifted. However, it was still not sufficient. I now had to excel at it. I had to become the best lover possible. I wanted to last as long as I desired, provide orgasms, and ensure they remembered me, and I did indeed become technically skilled. I lasted long and facilitated orgasms every time. Nevertheless, it was not truly about sharing a moment with someone. It was about performance, control, and proving something to myself. Providing orgasms was not about making her feel good. It was a method of reassuring myself, feeling superior to other men, and obtaining a sense of value. Even the kind gestures I offered often had ulterior motives. It was consistently about achieving something, rather than merely connecting. Then 2 years ago, a situationship came to an end. It had lasted roughly a year and a half. She was a lonely girl with extremely low self-esteem, and I was the one who ended it, but I caused her significant pain. A few days after the breakup, I began to undergo a transformation. I started reflecting on all my experiences with women since I was 14, every instance I approached, dated, or slept with someone. And I was struck by a horrifying realization. I had never truly regarded women as individuals. I did not wish to hurt them. I did not harbor hatred towards them, but I did not genuinely see them either. They were all variations of a single idea to me. The same category, the same color, just different shades. I could make exceptions for a few, particularly those who possessed a more masculine mindset, more like me, but I viewed them as exceptions, which only underscores the point. I did not naturally see women as wholly formed individuals. I perceived them as targets, objectives, mysteries to uncover. I should have recognized that sooner. Most of the time when I approached a girl, I was not genuinely interested in her. I merely approached because I felt compelled. If I did not, I believed I would never have the opportunity to experience anything with a woman. I remember a specific moment at 19, preparing for a date with someone I genuinely had feelings for. I nearly cried while getting ready, thinking, for once I feel human. That moment stands out to me because it was exceptionally rare. Some girls chose to cease contact with me because I was unkind towards them. I believe they were justified. I was not consciously trying to be cruel, but I acted cold, dominant, and detached because that was what I had been conditioned to believe was attractive. I did not perceive myself as possessing the power to hurt anyone because I felt insignificant and worthless internally. I held this deeply ingrained belief that women had all the options, power, and freedom. So how could someone like me possibly inflict harm upon them? The irony is that I had been aware of feminism for years. I had encountered it early on, even while searching for sexual advice. I was not oblivious to the challenges women experience. However, when it came to dating, I tuned it out. I could not engage. It did not seem applicable to my situation. I thought back to some of the girls I genuinely liked and who had rejected me. I pondered what might have transpired if I had simply been honest. If I had admitted, I do not know what I am doing, but I would like to get to know you. If I had not played a role. If I had not walked away the moment I discovered she had a boyfriend, but I never allowed myself that opportunity. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I approached, I faced rejection, and every instance felt like confirmation of my failures. In addition to that, the constant comparisons with other guys in the manosphere, other men are either enemies or losers. There is no brotherhood, no kindness, just competition. When you fail, it is always your fault. If a girl does not respond, gives a fake number, or ghosts you, it is all on you. You are not interacting with a person, you are navigating an obstacle course. If you perform well, you receive the reward sex. It quickly becomes profoundly disheartening, especially when you observe other men succeeding where you fail and you cannot even comprehend why. You did everything correctly, followed all the rules, and yet still achieved nothing. I did manage to sleep with several women, but the number of rejections I endured was staggering. People often say you become desensitized to the word no, and there is truth in that to a degree. Yet when 20 women say no in succession, it feels entirely different. Over the years, it accumulated and my self-esteem plummeted. I had learned to gauge my self-worth exclusively through my success with women. I only noticed women who attracted me. That was the extent of my perception. I did not see equals. I did not feel connected. And when I finally kissed someone or had sexual intercourse, it was not to share something beautiful. It was to escape the stigma of being a virgin. That weight in my chest finally lifted. Even then, I knew I would have preferred to engage with someone I trusted, someone with whom I could be honest. Yet the agony of remaining a virgin was too overwhelming. I just wanted it to end. Looking back, I realized that even the aspects I believed were positive, such as being able to provide pleasure, were performative. Providing orgasms was about proving something. It was about feeling a sense of control. It was about feeling valued. It was about being superior to other men. The kindness I exhibited often came with conditions, whether I was aware of it or not. Everything I learned about physical affection and sexual escalation was nothing more than sexual aggression. Plain and simple. I could not see that at the time because I was not intending to harm anyone. I merely desired to meet women and sleep with them, but therein lay the problem. That was all I had ever been taught, and I believed it for years. I was led to believe that if I did not sexualize, a girl could not develop an interest in me. I would simply become her friend. Being a friend to a girl was considered disgraceful, a blow to my manhood, as it implied that another man was superior in her eyes. If a girl preferred another guy, I perceived myself as a failure as a man and a lesser human being. This realization struck me painfully when I recognized that I often mistook signs of interest for overtly friendly behavior. It took me far too long to grasp what it feels like. On the opposite side, when you truly like someone who then withdraws and feels insulted by the thought of being regarded as a friend. Once I was able to voice my thoughts to someone, it amounted to nothing. Everything else inflicted suffering upon me, and I caused the girls who sought nothing to suffer as well. Story 4. My dad's new fiancée, Adriana, ruined our family just weeks after I lost my pets. When I confronted him, he blamed my mom and let her eavesdrop. "Whatever's my business is her business," he said. "Now he's married and I feel invisible. How did we end up here?" I am an older teenager for clarification. This is a throwaway account. Hello everyone. This is my first time actually posting something like this on Reddit. I am usually a lurker, but my mind has been racing lately, and I have become desperate enough to post here to express what is on my mind. My parents were married for 21 years. I never realized how unaffectionate their marriage was until my mother cheated on my father 2.5 years ago. At that point, all the puzzle pieces began to fall into place, and reflecting back, I can truly see just how distant they were from one another. My father slept on the couch for years. They always claimed it was due to his injured ankle and how much he moved in his sleep. However, I believe the fact that they were essentially roommates, rather than husband and wife, also contributed to the situation. I was extremely angry with my mother for a while. I praised my father and took his side, as one would expect. I will never forgive my mother for betraying him. It was the worst possible decision to resolve their marriage. She moved out, and my 2 older brothers and I stayed with my father. My parents attempted to make their marriage work 2 times after that, but it never succeeded. Then my father met a woman whom I will refer to as Adriana on Facebook dating. She's a few years older than my mother and has 11 children, 4 of whom are significantly younger than I am and live with her. She was a stay-at-home mother, relying solely on child support and disability for income. I am not being superficial. This information is important. I met this woman twice. Once when my father and I stayed at her house for the weekend, and another time after he tried to move me, my brothers, and my pets to her home with her other children 3 hours away. That was back in January of 2024. I could not handle the stress and returned to live with my mother, bringing my pets back with me. I lived with her for nearly a year, and eventually one of my brothers also moved back. During this time, I repaired my relationship with my mother, which does not mean I condone her actions, and I started to distance myself from my father. He had changed. He began to barely call me, and when he did, the conversations were short-lived. I always assumed it was due to his job and his responsibilities there. That was acceptable, I did not mind. However, he eventually started calling much less frequently, and I felt fortunate if I spoke to him once a month. As November of 2024 approached, my mother received an eviction notice for our apartment, the same one in which I had lived for most of my life. We had no place to go with all our pets, so my brother and I moved in with my grandmother and my rabbit while my mother remained in the apartment with my other pets, 2 dogs and 2 cats, in an attempt to resolve the situation. It did not work out, and my mother was effectively evicted, resulting in the pets being taken to the animal shelter. That was the last time I saw them. I am a very introverted person and I love animals, so losing my pets, one of my cats I had since I was 11, was incredibly traumatizing and devastating. I have been unable to find any information about their whereabouts or whether they are okay. My mother went to stay with my aunt, her sister, while my brother and I stayed with my grandmother. My grandmother is wonderful, I love her dearly, and she gives excellent advice. I am not unhappy living here because of her. I am unhappy because I have lost nearly everything except for some of my personal belongings and a portion of my family. Returning to the reason I am making this post, my father. He blocked my mother on all platforms, including her phone number, and again, he was barely calling. We requested that he take the animals before my mother was evicted, and he declined. I do blame him for not taking them, at least the cats, because then I would have known where they were. He also does not pay child support for me. I recently discovered that he has been engaged to Adriana for months, which I never knew because he never informed me. I had to learn about it through my best friend who saw the information on Facebook. That was essentially the final straw for me, so I called him and we had a 30-minute conversation. Nearly the entire call consisted of him repeatedly blaming my mother for various issues. This is a problem both of my parents have. They do not accept responsibility and continuously cast blame on each other. It has become so pronounced that it is challenging to discern what is true and what is not. I also told him multiple times that I wanted to speak with him privately, but he allowed Adriana into the room at some point, which I discovered only after hearing her voice in the background. I was extremely upset as I had specifically requested a one-on-one conversation, not one that included Adriana. However, he insists that whatever is his business is her business. However, that does not mean that what is my business is also hers. This situation made me want to stop communicating entirely, and at that moment I was crying, which is not my proudest moment. He told me to calm down, but I simply could not take it anymore. I expressed that I had articulated my feelings and he could do as he wished, but I did not want to talk to him if this is how it was going to be. I hung up and screamed into my pillow for about an hour. That was some time ago, but still recent. My father recently got married and I obviously was not invited to the wedding, neither was my brother. I likely would not attend regardless. I am not only upset with him, I am also angry with Adriana. I do not wish to judge anyone for their circumstances, but it feels as if she married him so quickly to secure financial stability. She has had at least 2 previous relationships that resulted in numerous children, and she was not employed at all when I knew her. It feels as though, since she has my father, she no longer needs to pretend to like us. I could be being irrational, but it feels as if she resents us. And damn it, I dislike her as well. I intensely dislike her as it is easy to direct my anger at her. I barely know her, so I can make assumptions about her. She is unpleasant and has taken my father away. However, it is not so simple to hate my father, as I know him so well. He was never a bad father, he was a very good one. But now that I am older, it seems as if he has assumed that I can manage on my own and that I no longer need him. I need him more than ever now, but he does not make the effort I wish he would. I wish I could stop caring so much. I wish I could just hate him so I could move on, but I cannot, and that is what keeps me awake at night. He gives the impression that he no longer cares and that he has a new family now. He has other people who make him happier than we ever did, so why would he need us? I do not doubt that my father loves me, at least not yet, but he demonstrates it in ways that are deeply disappointing. I apologize for the length of this post. I needed to vent. I do not seek advice or anything, I merely want to know that people are listening. If anyone is interested, I will be going to my first therapy session in over a year and a half on April 30th. I hope to work through everything.